The first junkyard we're going to show you, okay, of course, it is big. It is filled with what is now trash. But not only is this junkyard large, the items in the junkyard are large, because this area is in Kharkiv, Ukraine, and it's a junkyard for tanks. Rows and rows of tanks, lined up like it's Labor Day at your local Ford tank dealership. Although they aren't washed and waxed and ready to appeal to that buyer's eye. No, they're rusty and worn. And are those vegetables growing out of them? Once a tree sprouts from the item, you toss it aside and it's garbage. This is fascinating because at one point in time, these were machines of war. They were deadly. And where do all the tanks go after they serve their purpose? Not a question we ponder very often. I suppose there is no tank heaven. But this is like a tank cemetery. That's a lot of metal just sitting around. You'd think someone would take advantage and make some cool looking and indestructible traveling coffee mug or something. Come on, who's not gonna buy a tank mug? Get ready for a spooky one. This place is called the Cavern of the Lost Souls. Once a mine in Wales that employed a lot of miners. Father Time and Mother Nature were cruel in this case. Massive flooding shut down all the mining activity and halted it for decades. No miners were able to work here anymore, at least not without danger. So, what's this old mine filled with? Is it a junkyard of souls? You know what? The name really makes you just think that, doesn't it? Well, miners just stopped working here. The cavern filled with water. No one came around for ages. And then soil and earth and the rocks and everything from above caved in, creating giant holes that opened to the depths of the cavern. Hey man, is this a good place to toss my junk? And yeah, that's exactly what you'll see down there. Loads of junk. No one was quite sure how bad it was until some explorers went on a little mission to figure out for themselves how many souls were swallowed up in this cavern. And it turns out, a lot. Household items, entire cars. Wow, you guys never heard of trade in value? Instead, you rolled your car into a pit. I think you could have found any item you wanted down here. They should do one of those antique roadshows down here. But they just need to be careful of the lost souls, which apparently refers to the lost souls of a million lost shoes. We all know plastic waste is a huge problem on this planet. And the place where it's the absolute worst? The place where the most people are, China. Yeah, unfortunately, there are pockets of ocean off of the China coast that are basically junkyards of plastic. The plastic to water ratio is not looking good over there. China is the biggest plastic producing and plastic using nation in the world. And so much of this plastic that has been used and thrown out winds up in the ocean. Hopefully you find this concerning, as it is happening in China, but it also happens everywhere else. If you don't find this concerning, consider this. This plastic winds up right inside that fish. It winds up everywhere, in your food, wherever. Sometimes studies suggest that the average person consumes 5 grams of plastic a week, which is about the weight of your credit card. Now, we don't know how many credit cards you have, but imagine eating 52 of those a year. Not only would that be unhealthy and become cumbersome, but how annoying to have to call the bank so often for replacement cards. Okay, now we like it when a junkyard has a theme. This one right here is a motorcycle graveyard. A giant motorcycle graveyard. It's ridiculous. The average person probably hasn't even seen this many motorcycles in their lifetime. And here are all these guys, just chilling out together, telling jokes about having 2 wheels is better than 4. I keep getting this uneasy feeling that all these bikes are going to start up in unison and start driving together. Apparently, there was once a man who was a motorcycle dealer and enthusiast who owned this. Enthusiast? You don't say. But then he sold the place. It changed hands. There was a battle over ownership with the bank. Blah, blah, blah. Boring adult stuff. And then, voila, motorcycle graveyard. Somebody said that the only man-made structure you could see from space are the Great Wall of China. And I guess this junkyard filled with bikes. Next, we have Rosoka, Cemetery of the Machines, which sounds like the portion of the title that comes after the Terminator 9 series. But alas, this one's real. And there's no Arnold in this movie. But there are over 1,400 machines, and boy do we love a good themed junkyard. They got helicopters, fire trucks, tanks, and more. All which were contaminated after the rescue efforts for the accident at Chernobyl. That's a lot of machinery. The footage taken here is quite eerie. If paired up with the right music, it could actually be pretty frightening. Yeah, just watching someone move around and all through this abandoned machinery. Oh man, just gets that unsettling feeling like someone or something's watching. As far as we know, there doesn't seem to be much activity over here. But hey, no need to overstay our welcome, just in case there's a rising of some abandoned machines. And over here we have yet another themed junkyard, and it's actually another tank graveyard. This one is in Asmara, Eritrea, a nation in northeastern Africa, just along the Red Sea. But Moses, as our witness, we're telling you, no matter who you are, you're not parting an easy path through this tank graveyard. This one seems to be a lot less organized than the last tank graveyard we saw, almost as if the people leaving these machines behind didn't even hear a word on organizational skills or the wonders of the neat rows and columns. In addition to the tanks, there are plenty of other military vehicles, and in many cases, they're just stacked on top of one another. All these vehicles are just rusting and rotting away. And here's another case where we just see life and cactuses growing right inside and all around the members of this cemetery. That doesn't look like it's going to help your resale value. This place looks like a mess. But one thing that does come to mind, this would make an amazing paintball course. If the people of Eritrea want to make some money, I think they should shoot for that idea. This next one, well, should be a crime. Car lovers, you may want to brace yourselves. Hold on to your shifters. We're visiting Dubai to take a look at their supercar graveyard. Ah, man, it just hurts to see this. Look at all these beautiful cars just slowly being destroyed by immense heat and sun and corroded by the sand. Wow, what is happening here? Rolls Royces, Ferraris, Lambos, list goes on. Some of the nicest cars around are just sitting here, slowly being ruined. Why Dubai? Dubai, no! It appears there were a lot of cases where extremely rich businessmen in the UAE using their riches on expensive cars and the like, just for one reason or another having financial problems and massive debt. And since the UAE is pretty harsh on their debt laws, it's believed that these people have just fled the country to evade the problems, leaving behind their yellow beauties, their bright red sweethearts, letting them collect dust and transform slowly and sadly into a pile of sand with wheels, in which passing children may write on the windows with their fingers saying, "Wash me."
Like and subscribe right now, or you're gonna have bad luck for the next week. Don't risk it. Let's start.
And now we head down to Lordstown, Ohio. Yeah, it's a long flight from Dubai, but we're lucky to have gotten a direct flight, and that's rare. And oh, would you look at this? We landed at the worst time. We arrived during rush hour. Rush hour for trains. Nah, this is not gridlock traffic, though it is a bunch of vehicles in standstill. This is just a locomotive graveyard in Ohio. Dozens of trains that have just either been left to rot and rust away or waiting for some kind of refurbishment. Not only are there a bunch of these locomotives left here, but due to the fact that each one of them is so tremendously long, this makes for a humongous junkyard. Just think of the space it takes for one train to fit. We've got a lot here. This is truly a lot of metal just sitting around. We're starting to think that we as a planet have a vehicle problem. But yeah, we need our vehicles. We make those vehicles, use those vehicles. Then every year, we make new vehicles. And then, where are all the old ones going? What are we doing with the old vehicles? We're just leaving them in the grass, on the railroad tracks, wherever we can fit them. There's gotta be a better way. If you haven't been convinced that we have a vehicle problem, then it's gonna get a little clearer for you. We've seen junkyards filled with cars, tanks, and trains. What haven't we seen yet? Tractors. And cue the farm equipment, everybody. This is Europe's largest tractor scrapyard. If you were ever wondering what 10,000 tractors looks like, which we're positive you were, well, here's your chance to visualize it. Yeah, in Spain, we have this gigantic collection of tractors just sitting there for years. Though this is a junkyard where the tractors don't receive care or some kind of upkeep, they are surprisingly in good shape for the most part. And yeah, they sit around in the sun all day long, but they aren't getting a lot of damage from water or anything. And I believe it's because the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plains. And this area of Spain seems to be anti-plains, or at least anti-rain. Next, we head to Saudi Arabia, and you're gonna see some shots that'll astonish you. This is the largest junkyard in all of Saudi Arabia. And this junkyard is absolutely one of the largest in the entire world. The word massive only begins to describe it. Look at all these cars. This is insane. At the very least, if you wanted to get yourself a car, you may have come to the right place. Yeah, hi, I was looking for a car.
Please be specific.
Toyota Corolla?
Please be more specific.
2010 Toyota Corolla. In gray. Sure. Why didn't you say so? We got 1,000 of that exact model. Oh man, what do you do if you want the car that's underneath 7 other cars? Who's got that forklift? I don't know, we're guessing that these cars are not really anything most people want to buy, as they're just being crushed and stacked and thrown about like soda cans. Well, wow, maybe the owners of the junkyard will get into some kind of metal repurposing business. Not only could they make some serious cash, but they might be able to end our planet's plastic overconsumption problems. Something to think about, guys. Our next big junkyard is called $1 Million Point. Well, wait a second, that sounds fancy, that sounds exciting. Maybe we're transitioning from junkyards to something else here. What do we have in store? Sure, another junkyard. It's just that this one is underwater. And it appears that the $1 million refers to the estimated cost of everything that has been dumped down there. This is an underwater dump just off the coast of the island in the southwestern Pacific. And I guess when you're on the island, yeah, where else are you dumping your junk? The one thing you have plenty of, surrounding you from all angles, is the water. This is a popular scuba diving attraction, and why wouldn't it be? Lush color, beautiful seafoam green water that delivers a tranquil experience as you glide through it, millions of exotic fish, and a bunch of junk, jeeps, bulldozers, semi-trailers, forklifts, tractors, usual ocean stuff. Like that one guy in Finding Nemo, what was his name? Forklift Frankie. So, we're going to say that the biggest vehicles on the planet are basically going to be ships. That is, if we exclude the mecha fortress in the sky that the Avengers use. But think about it. There are so many huge ships that have existed. Where do they all go when they're done? When they're out of commission? They may go to the Gadani Shipbreaking Yard in Pakistan. This is one of the largest shipbreaking yards in the entire world. See, these people got it right. Break down the ships, produce scrap material. And that is a lot of metal. In the 80s, this shipbreaking yard employed around 30,000 people. Nowadays, it's just about 6,000 people. That doesn't mean that there are any less ships. In fact, this may have even contributed to this location having so many more ships as there are less people working on the site. But this is basically a ship retirement home, where every ship hopes to make it to eventually. The place the Titanic dreamt of ending up. But only the very luckiest ships wind up here in Pakistan's gigantic shipbreaking yard. And if they're very lucky, well, they may just end up being repurposed into your frying pan. Life of luxury. So, if you remember, there was once a scandal with Volkswagen when they were caught cheating on their emissions tests. And, well, no, it wasn't their finest moment over there at Volkswagen. But since then, they've been on a mission, buying back their cars. They have bought back about 350 of their US diesel vehicles. In doing so, they have dropped about $7.4 billion. So is this all about a graveyard for money? Because, woo, that's some serious cash. No, this is Volkswagen's graveyard in California. Because after buying back all those cars, they had to put them somewhere. And so, here are a ton of them. In this California junkyard, they all wait. And we must say that we're impressed with the organizational skills of this. Look at those nice, neat rows, perfectly aligned. We understand it's a junkyard, but does it have to be junky? See, guys? With a bit of organization. All other junkyards needs to look to Volkswagen for this one. Hey, this one's pretty unique. You see, we were just talking about organizational skills and how you can really make a junkyard pretty, and right here in China, they were listening. At first glance, When you see an aerial shot of this spot in China, it almost looks like a field with multicolored beautiful flowers, or maybe some amazing and gigantic painting. But no, on a closer look, this is a bicycle graveyard, sharing the same space. To be more specific, this is where all the shared bicycles of China go, when they are all done being used. Wow, a lot of shared bicycles sharing the same space. But look at that layout. We're really impressed. Really taking your junk and turning it into something to look at. Bravo, China. This looks like some fancy painting. Your art teacher in school would look at this and be like, the overwhelming rage of the red clashing with the joy of yellow represents the complicated emotions of humans. All right, maybe that's not the intent of this layout. We're still giving this junkyard a 10 out of 10. Hands down. Prettiest junkyard we've ever seen. So what do we have in store for you next? Ooh, I can hardly contain my excitement. Tires. Loads of tires. Like, wow. Holy moly, I haven't even seen this many tires before in my life. I've never imagined this many tires. But I guess when you think about it, tires are another thing that have to go somewhere when they're done being used. They can't all wind up on the side of the highway. And even though there's a lot of trash on the side of the roads, this junkyard in Kuwait is truly littered with tires. They have so many they're starting to dig holes in the ground just to bury the tires. An estimated 7 million tires are already in the ground. And if we're talking about 4 wheels to a car, that's still enough tires for 1,750,000 cars. Or even if we're talking 16-wheelers, that's still enough tires for 437,500 of those trucks. I guess what it all boils down to, and what we're trying to say, that's a lot of tires.